All right, let's move on to Deutschland. Elli, or is it Eli? I think it's Elli in Germany. Wie geht's?
Guten Tag, mir geht's gut und euch?
Good. So, what would you like to talk about today?
Hi, I'm calling in because I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot lately about stuff like that, and I was raised very Roman Catholic, which I know is pretty tame compared to some of the American varieties of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
But there is still a lot of stuff like. I am definitely not a Christian, and I don't really consider myself a theist.
Mhm.
I'm still kind of figuring out all of that stuff. I think I'm leaning towards atheist. It's still kind of in the making. I don't know how to like reconcile like atheism and still like some sort of spirituality. I don't know, not really what I was calling about. Like when you're raised in a pretty strict Christian household, like comparatively, there's a lot of like small behaviors that you got drilled into your head. And what I was wondering about is like, how do I deal with that? I still struggle. Like, the 10 Commandments were like really pushed, but like, for example, do not lie. The only thing I learned from that is to lie better.
Right? Yeah.
And there's a lot of like tiny subtle things like that where I still catch myself, for example, lying. I lie about the like silliest stuff where it's totally not necessary. Do you guys have like a tip on how to like let go of that bullshit? Excuse me for my language.
Oh,
You
are
can
fine
say whatever
here.
the fuck you want on this show.
And yes, it is bullshit. So we agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't know. How about you, Eric?
Well, I mean, it's a couple of things, and this is just kind of one flavor of the same issue, and there's a lot of intersection here, and a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when I mentioned that, you know, we live in a system that is based on, you know, needing to be subservient to one thing, you know, or another. So a lot of times it's, you know, respect your elders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, what if my elders are absolute bigots? Well, for a lot of us, especially here in the States, it's shut your mouth, let them be a bigot, and then just roll your eyes when they walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we had a caller last week who called in who said that they really wanted to have a conversation. Their dad really wanted to go over talking with them and studying the Bible, but he wasn't allowed to say anything back. He just needed to let his dad talk at him.
Mm-hmm.
Because his dad was sharing and being very, very giving and providing if he was talking about his beliefs. But if, you know, the atheist responds, then it's just persecution and rudeness.
Right.
And, you know, having those things drilled into you it's so much more than just religion. And it's interesting because you walk this line. You don't want to be disrespectful in a, like, I'm not an asshole way, because you don't want to be an asshole, but at the same time, we as a society create these structures that make absolutely zero sense and that enable and create hiding spots for bigotry. And so you see that specifically in religion. You know, you see that in a lot of religious places where people will go, you know, hey, I'm, you know, gay people make me feel yucky, so I'm going to find verses that say that being gay is bad, so I can have a place to couch my bigotry. Or maybe there's someone who is an absolute misogynist. You know, there are lots of places in the Bible that you can find misogyny and go, well, obviously, you know, the man needs to be the one in charge. And so, you know, as far as advice goes, I think one of the things that helps me is recognizing that this is not unique, and that there have been places where I've been able to peek through that and break through in other areas. So it means that I'm not just helpless the entire time, right? I'm not completely unable to shed some of that. And so I have the power, I have the ability, and I recognize that it's not different than the others. And while that doesn't always make it easier, it definitely creates a stronger, more stable ground just to be on from there.
actually, that's really helping me. I'm sorry, I'm kind of tearing up a little.
No,
It's okay.
It's just really a struggle. Like you were talking about homophobia and stuff. Like I am mainly interested in women, and that is a thing I have come across.
Yeah.
Also from like my community where I grew up, and I just at the same time, like with my brain. With my Homo sapiens brain, I can see that that's bullshit. They're just like using their own anxieties and stuff and projecting them onto their religion and using that to give reason to why they're like disliking whatever thing. Like I'm not like whipping out my nudes or whatever and shoving them in people's faces.
Right.
And but still, it's a lot of the time it's just. You feel so powerless, honestly. You just like revert back into what you were taught because you've been doing it so long and it becomes so natural almost.
Yeah. It's a physical thing too. And I brought this up on the show before, but it bears repeating. There are things that happen to your brain when you are indoctrinated, especially from a young age. If you were born into a religious household that held very strictly to certain religious guidelines or rules or thought patterns, that actually physically changes your brain and makes it so that those neural pathways are lubricated more, so they become habitual. The thoughts, the actions become habitual. It's a physical thing. And the good news is that that's reversible and it takes a while. So as you're working through this is not something that you just aren't doing correctly. This is a process that takes a long time to actually complete. But you can rewire your own brain by stopping those thoughts and thinking about them and being, oh, I don't care about this anymore. I'm going to rewire this to move in this direction instead. So instead of saying, oh, I know for me, I had a lot of internalized homophobia when I first started, interacting with some friends who weren't straight back in undergrad. And I was very concerned about it. And my first thought was, ick, And then as I started looking at that, I realized this is not congruent with who I am as a person. This has no bearing on how I feel about this individual. I actually really like this person. So why do I go into ick territory all the time? That must not be instinctual. That must be something else. And so I actually made a point to, for lack of a better term, take that thought captive and move it into a new pattern. And it took a long time, but it worked because I'm gay now.
Because that's how that works.
That's how it works.
Finally.
No, but I did want to just make sure that we address that as well. This isn't something you're behind on. This isn't something that you just need to get over or have that force of will, because this is a physical thing that happened to your brain and you are taking the steps to rewire it, which is so important. But it is going to take time, and you should be patient with yourself while that happens.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so nice if it was easier to be patient with yourself.
Right? That would solve a lot of my problems.
I totally agree with you. Like I'm actually going to therapy, and I'm super glad that I don't have to pay out of pocket for that. And it's not just because of that. There's like a lot of overlap, and I'm sure you know that a lot of people who have the tendency to for a lack of a better word, dominate other people, they often use religious frameworks to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously that also plays into the whole thing. But I really do agree with you that it's a really visceral reaction sometimes when you get confronted with something that you've kind of been traumatized by for.
Yeah. And the worst part for me is that they prey on that feeling of being traumatized by a thing, by a flashback, by a trigger, and they say, oh, you see, that's proof that we're right, and that's the spirit convicting you, or that's American Christianese for, you know, we're right, you're wrong. But it's not, it has no bearing on the truth of the claim, how you feel about it. The only thing that proves is that you were subjected to something that you viscerally are reacting to in a negative way. And that alone should make it important for you to take stock and stop and say, hey, why am I feeling this visceral reaction? And is this right for me? Is this healthy? Are things that I like making me feel this way? Or is it just this environment? Is it just these people? Is it just this message that's making me feel so awful?
That's the reason why I actually at this point entirely avoid organized religion as much as I can. Like earlier you were talking about rituals and stuff, and I'm more on Eric's side here. Like the ritualistic part of it kind of triggers me.
And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
Especially, I found that is actually very, very predominant among former Catholics specifically. I think there's a lot more of that ritual tied in inherently to the doctrine.
There's so much. You're standing, you're kneeling, you're standing, you're kneeling.
So I totally understand that. I think for me, because my upbringing was so non-ritualistic in terms of, you know, we were, you know, evangelical, non-denominational, which meant anything goes. So for me, it was a little bit more, I'm discovering ritual for the first time and it's helpful. But I totally understand that if you came from a religion where ritual was very heavily in an aspect of that you might shy away from that. And that's absolutely fine too. It's certainly a personal preference at that point.
Actually, to tie into that, I think it's really important simply because there are so many people who will have talked about the ACA or gone to the ACA and gone, that's just an atheist church. and you ask them, what do you mean by atheist church? Well, it's a bunch of atheists congregating together, talking about what they believe. It's like, okay, so does that mean that Magic the Gathering is also a church? That stamp collecting is also a church? Video games, board games are also a church? The thing is there are so many people who are raised with this idea that when people gather together and create a community, that somehow that idea is owned by religion, and that atheists are now being religious by getting together and enjoying each other's company and creating a positive community. And I think that's absolute bullshit, you know, but how do you tell that to somebody who really has that connection, right? If somebody's been raised in that, then it is triggering. They see all these people and they go, I'm just going back into what I had before.
It's just good branding. It's like why we call all bandages Band-Aids.
All
Band-Aids are not like, that's not what the thing is, but because it's so culturally like, that is the brand name. So it automatically, everything is that.
Yeah.
It's just the church got there to the point where they're like, we're claiming this human thing that all humans have and want, whether that's ritual, whether that's community, whether that's feeling at peace with yourself or at one with the rest of the world, like whatever that is, they're like, that's ours now. Yeah.
And Ellie, being somebody who's on your side about this, here's how I categorize it. There are a lot of people who find those things together in places that I don't necessarily agree with, but I see them being beneficial, right? So I see lots of pseudo-spiritual people gathering for things like, for whatever reasons, right? What was that group that suns their buttholes? Because they thought that
perineum sunning.
Perineum sunning. Yeah, if you haven't, that is ridiculous. But there you have a group who does this, and it's the more. I'm sorry.
It sounds hilarious.
Yeah, don't do it. You'll sunburn your butt. Don't do it.
Thanos says no. Thanos, the actor who played Thanos, tried it and got a very sunburned butthole.
Yeah.
A fun piece of trivia I don't think he wants the world to know about.
My roommate Holy Cooley did a whole video on it. It was great. But I had a whole other thing and it just fell right out of my head that I was going to lead into about
He thought about Josh Brolin's butthole and then everything.
Normally.
Yeah,
normally.
that's how it works.
Anyway, Ellie, Dankeschön. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, it was so nice to talk with you.
Vielen Dank. I might call some other time. Thank you for being so nice to me. I was actually really anxious.
We're not that mean.
No, we're good. We're good.
We'd love to hear back. If you go through this process some more and you come up against a question or a concern, we're here. We want to hear more.
All right.
Thank you so much. Have a nice afternoon, I think.
Cheers.